Welcome to the Consultants Way podcast, where we explore the world of professional services consulting. Hosted by Dean McMann and Anthony Paluska, each episode delivers expert insights, real-world stories, and interviews with top consultants to help you refine your consulting skills.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm Anthony Paluska and this is Dean McMann. Today we're going to talk about a topic we've been receiving lots of different inquiries about over the past couple of months. I don't know how we're going to possibly do it justice in half an hour, so I hope we don't create more questions than we answer as part of this process, but we'd like to talk about...
No, you can guarantee that.
Yeah.
You can guarantee. We're gonna come out of this with a lot more mail about this topic.
Yeah, so what the topic is professional services as a service. And I think the topic itself, or the title itself, is obviously kind of somewhat self-evident, but also interesting to people in the context of the overall trend that the market's going through right now from a software as a service and a X as a service. So anything that we can make as a service has lots of value for organizations. The stability of revenue, the predictability of certain things, the valuation curve, I think, was the primary thing that started to drive this transition. And a lot of things made it, and professional services seems sort of stuck in this. I've seen some organizations, as you have, that have done a decent job of trying to adopt this model. I've seen others try and fail, quite frankly, and revert back to the old way of doing things. And so what we'd like to talk through today is a little bit of what we're seeing, what we're hearing, a bit of a framework for some of the key components of that, tell a couple of stories of some clients and some organizations that have entered into this for different reasons, and then answer some of the most common questions we get on the topic.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. I think it's interesting that just from the top, a lot of the companies that I hear are on it or in it or even making it work, the idea did not come from PS.
No.
Right? It's from the heads of the organization who may not understand the complexity of this change. Mm-hmm. Right, and the impact on all the kinds of things we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and it's interesting because everybody fully appreciates the complexity of the shift from a perpetual software license to a subscription-based model and the SaaS, that SaaS evolution. If you're not born in the cloud, born as a SaaS business, but you had to shift your on-premise software to more of that subscription model, everybody understands the things like the revenue issues that you encounter right out of the gate.
Swallowing the fish.
Right. And there's been tons of good information written on how to best go about that topic. This one, it's just a little murkier for those organizations that are trying to go through it. So, Dean, maybe to frame some of this up at the beginning, what do you think the reason organizations are going on this journey at the root cause? I mean, I alluded to a couple of them, but but why go through this pain?
Yeah, we're generalizing here, right? But I think it's often two things I'm trying to solve. One is I want more things to look like SaaS in my valuation, right? And second, I want a predictable revenue stream across everything because it's easier on accounting, easier reporting my quarterly results. It just simplifies. And I think that's really the reasons. And let's admit up front, that is a financial management issue, not a customer support issue, although we do have some examples where the customers like it better. Yeah. And it's not a better PS or better implementation issue. At least that's not the impetus of it, we've heard.
Yeah, I think there's a misconception that this is always a resource and capacity management benefit for the PS organization, because as revenue gets more evenly spread out and you avoid the peaks and valleys that come in a project-based services business, you historically would have attributed that or equated that to capacity stability and utilization stability. But as we'll talk about, it's not really the case all the time.
No. And I would even argue, as we dive into it, that sometimes it's counter to better utilization, better use of talent. But there are other times that there are good examples.
Lots of benefits to that, especially as we've retrained a lot of the buyers in the market to go on a long-term journey with us and to get things in this subscription-based model. I think there's some benefits there. So let's deconstruct this for a second and talk about, I'll say 5 key components, right? Let's talk about the impacts of making this, forget making the transition. Let's say living in this model, right? What are the differences? Let's compare the two.
Yeah, that's good.
Let's talk about support, right? And how that changes. Let's talk about how you do offers and portfolio a little bit different. We'll talk about your sales and account management model. Finance we can talk about and the financial management of that. And then I'm going to call it talent broadly, but I really mean your delivery team and how you structure that, and then how you do resource allocation.
And let's remember that none of your responsibilities changed, right?
To your client.
Matter of fact, to the client, to success, to your talent, to none of those changed. And we've talked about before, there are pressures on businesses now to implement faster, which means we've moved some of the burden to post-implementation for what we used to call implementation. Yeah. So adoption. But so all that's going on, and then we're changing the financial model.
Right. So let's kind of take those one by one.
At a time.
One by one. So let's start with support. We were on this topic a little bit earlier today. This concept of support and adoption and customer success and just long-term retention, especially when the PS as a service is being tied to a software product that is also being sold as a service, becomes really important. And what is the role of customer success? What is the role of support services? And then professional services or managed services even sit in this interesting situation here. And I find balancing what we do, right? It was very clean cut previously when we have project-based work that we do as a professional services team. But a lot of the PS as a service, we'll talk about some models in a bit, think of them as the traditional retainer model, like you would have with a legal firm or somebody like that, where you have a set number of hours to consume from the PS business.
Or at least a set payment schedule. Yeah, and it can be set up many ways, but it's a set payment.
Yeah, with an expectation of some level of effort,
something done on the other side.
But it gets fuzzy. It gets murky because you have a support services team and you have a customer success team that can solve some of these problems. And so when does PS need to get engaged? When are you consuming those hours? When are you not consuming those hours? If we're just using the very simple hours portion of it, those rules get very complex, or else you end up with clients not feeling like they need to buy your PS as a service, or you get them pulled in too often to solve problems that sit outside of it, and then you've got an unhappy customer base.
Yeah, and one of the changes we've seen which I think plays into this on customer success, they're a sales group now, and often they're no longer litmus to, is it being used? Are we expanding? Or they're very much, did they buy the next product? Did we get on? So that puts even more pressure on the post long-term success on the only people you have to call, PS, and within the organization. So I think that if the assumption is, the positive assumption is, we're going to get you committed for a long journey with PS, no matter what goes underneath the barrier or the story, I do think that improves that length of time, improves the ability to assure success, improves the ability to limit customer success from taking on things that are completely poorly done from a success point of view, not from an activity point of view. So that is a interesting thing. What you don't see people doing, that I've seen do this, they haven't really reevaluated how many customer success people they need.
Yeah, their whole support process and their support team size and all of that stuff has to be reevaluated with the backdrop of PS is now playing an overlay role in some of those situations. And
particularly from the client's point of view now.
Yeah, and making sure that the client and your internal team understand where my role starts and stops in a seamless way, so that the client still is driving towards that.
Yeah, and we see 18-month contracts now, right?
Yep.
18-month contracts. So if you're going to work with a PS team and you usually work with a PS leader, maybe not leader of the practice, but you're a leader, you're going to become extremely intimate with her. You're going to have relationships with her. And that's different than the pressure, let's get implemented in 3 months, right? Those are going on at the same time. But that long relationship, all those steering committees, all those stories, all those decisions now build a very good relationship, and that person's not going to be there in the way the model works today. Yeah. And who are they going to call? It doesn't matter. They'll call her. Yeah. Right?
Well, and so let's move into we'll go out of order a little bit and go into selling and account management, because a lot of the things we've talked about on some of our other webinar sessions were very focused on, and something we believe is very important, which is the professional services team owning the client relationship, that relationship management, the constant executive expansion, the project, right? Not just the outcome of your engagement, but the long-term outcome of the client. And what this model does do in a very positive way is it does pull some of the maybe historic roles and responsibilities out of the sales and the account management function, and does place them into professional services. Because if you
just by default,
because if you're managing a long-term relationship, you are constantly looking at, how am I growing? How am I expanding this? How am I making sure they're getting the value out of it? Take the very simple hourly retainer consumption-based model. If they're not using something, then how are you helping identify new opportunities for them to take advantage of your services? And so the mindset of your project leaders has to shift into more account management focused than maybe just getting it out.
And in this case, focused. When we're talking about account management, so we're using terms that maybe everybody's going to deal with. We're talking about account management the way a content-rich group would do it. Not just, not that there aren't a lot of content-rich account managers, there are, but there are also other ones that aren't, and other business structures that don't. But this is that I'm going to work with the executives, and I don't have a backstop like corporations use account managers, where they go and talk to other people and they're really carrying messages. In this case, you're in the executive offices all the time. Yeah. There's nobody to go ask. Right? You're it.
Yeah.
So therefore, to your point, they still got to know PS. They've got to really be good consultants, maybe better.
They have to understand the project work, and they have to understand the art of managing that client through their journey in a way that in a project-based PS world, sometimes you can get away with not doing as much of that if you have a good team around you that is that strong account manager, that is content rich, that other resources can
or you're not really held accountable for success, right? You're held accountable for your projects. Yeah. But now the whole industry's changed to be very accountable for success, because, as some of our friends say, the land grab is kind of over.
Yeah.
So it's very important that we maximize the revenue in the accounts we have, because we may not get that many accounts. We'll get new accounts, but nothing like what many firms, what they've already got.
Yeah. So that's kind of the selling and account management within an ongoing relationship. But let's talk about the
transaction. We didn't talk about.
Yeah. Let's talk about the front end of it.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So there's a little dance that goes on, and I think it fits the way we sell a little easier than the project work, because they can say, here's a page with all the stuff we're going to do, and here's a page with different clients going through this in a different order because of this problem or that. And these are easy because it's all prepared material, and we like working from prepared material. And you get to pay for it like this.
Yeah.
Right? And here's how we control it. We steering committees, blah, blah, blah. I think that actually is an easier story. They may ask about the overall number and the time, but they've gotten so used to, with the big implementations, paying, used to be the rule was you pay double for the consulting services than you do for the product. So I think that's actually an easier sell.
I think so as well. Yeah. And so that gets into, how do you define and construct your offer, and how do you look at your portfolio of offers differently, instead of having to kind of productize unique customizations that we do, or any productized offering. You have to view your portfolio as something that you are continually talking about in the aggregate, and how do the different pieces light up for a client as you continue to communicate them with them throughout it. So you're selling the value of the breadth of services that you can provide, and you have to think about your offer structure much differently.
In front of them, you're drawing a journey and redrawing that journey based on knowledge and stuff. So that's the consulting skill. But also, a lot of product companies felt comfortable over productizing their projects because that took less. Here's the project planning. So we're taking.
Here's our statement of work for that. Here's everything's all.
And therefore we're simplifying the PS job. True or not?
Okay.
True or not?
Yeah.
In their own mind.
Yeah.
In their own mind, you still are an advisor. Now, and you gave a great example when we were talking earlier about, hey, the value is that journey wouldn't work for you, and we had to take a piece of this work and a piece of that work and put it together. So now you've got to really think about your work across scenarios. Right. What are the normal scenarios, and how do we equip ourselves to be more fluid, which is so counter to what we were teaching in our tech companies, 5 years ago. Yeah. And I have not heard anybody. I interviewed a young manager the other day. Didn't understand it that way at all. Still did exactly the same thing. I don't care how we build them. So we really haven't penetrated yet the nuances of driving success.
Yep. So let's talk talent. So one of the benefits of this model from a client's perspective is the burden of the talent interchangeability and making sure that we put our right resources on your problem, not knowing what your problem is going to be in advance, and making that hey, I can sub in. I know that this expertise is required in this, and I, as the delivery firm, have that expertise over here. I can tap on this person. They don't have to always be on your project team. I can plug in resources.
We're not going to list the project resources like they like to do, right?
Right. I have an entire inventory of people with lots of capabilities that I can bring to bear to solve that problem. So that's a great benefit for the client.
But that orchestra leader is going to have to be better.
Your resource management process and team and everything has to be great, and that is especially a problem. And this is where we've seen it is, and we'll talk about some of this in a little bit. Is if you're running a project-based business and the PS as a service business concurrently with the same resources,
which you have to at some point if you're going to make the train.
Right. It becomes very difficult because you have an obligation on two fronts, and one of those models has to win out when tensions arise.
And the tension will be about talent.
Yes.
It won't be about the financials.
There's a couple of resources that you probably already know within your organization, and if you don't, you will as soon as you go through this journey, that rise to the top as the highest, most in-demand resources once you pull them out of that project-based staffed environment into where do they need to be deployed based on the problem that they are uniquely positioned to solve, it becomes...
And the people who can actually bring a client along with them become highly desirable, and the peanut butter is not equal everywhere, so you're going to say, hey, if every time we have the SaaS project, or PaaS project, PSaaS,
there it is.
I want Carol.
Yeah.
Right? Carol's not as valuable over there. Oh, no, everybody loves Carol. I know. But I'm the future, right? And it's tough.
Yeah. And the client, the client will want that too, and they don't have the ability to choose that as often as they'd like, but yeah, we have to manage them through that whole process.
I think about a friend of ours that ran the PS group a few years ago of one of the largest software companies in the world, and all they were preoccupied with at that time, because they had unlimited demand, was scheduling, right? No success, no problems, scheduling. Compare that to, you signed an 18-month agreement. I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know who's going to be on it, but trust me, I'll figure all that out, and you're paying monthly if I'm successful or not. It's a totally new business.
Yeah.
And if you have both going, it's friction all the time.
Yeah. It does, if you compare it to the project-based businesses that'll run like big, even multi-month or multi-year implementations or projects like that, where you can build out your plan, and there's some replanning that goes on all the time because clients are unique. You kind of have a good sense of your resource plan, who you're going to need when, and you can look 9 months out and say, I'm going to need this group at this stage in our project. for these kinds of engagements, in a lot of cases, you're replanning the specifics of what we're doing almost. You could be replanning it as frequently as monthly or quarterly, depending on the industry that you're in and depending on the type of project. So that person that is in charge of that account there is an additional level of burden on them that they need to provide back to the organization to make sure that resources I'm going to need, we can make available.
And something I haven't seen anywhere yet is you got to be able to say, where am I in my implementation? Yep. Right? It can't be just what's next. There has to be some mathematical formula and intelligence put into, I'm burning at this rate and I've got this much left, right? Well, then you have the other problem, which you mentioned is they're not using the hours if we're doing hourly. If we're not doing hourly, you still have that problem. It's just not a billing problem. So I'm getting behind. I'm getting ahead on money, but I'm behind on rev rec.
Right.
I'm behind on implementation, and I'm behind on talent that I now can't get because I didn't use them, and they're
you find yourself in
a snowball.
Real problem.
And I bet that's happening a lot right now. Right.
So let's maybe talk about a couple of examples of some organizations we've seen that have entered into this, and maybe just a couple of points on those, and then we'll close with a couple of questions.
Sure.
So two scenarios here. The first one was SaaS company. They had a professional services team. They had a customer success organization. They would implement their software, just to try not to be too specific, but also specific enough that it's helpful, right? They would go and
a mythical firm that did mythical things.
Yeah. So there was always the need for additional levels of customization and add-ons to the work that they were doing that lived around their product. And
customization of product or service?
Of
service contracts, consulting
of product.
All right. Okay.
Customization of product that hey, this changed about our use case and we need to do something to customize it. And most of their clients were not equipped to do any of that work in-house, and so they would fall back on the customer success team originally or the support organization to help solve some of these different problems. PS was fully capable of providing that service and went to market and tried to sell it. But what they kept running into was, as the customer success team became more and more embedded in their clients, the clients would go to the customer success team. The customer success team would work with the support organization.
And it would be free.
And they would just get a bunch of free work.
Yeah.
And it was a lost revenue opportunity for our client, but it was also a loss for the client in a lot of cases, although they didn't realize it, because they had people that were ill-equipped to be solving some of these problems, spending days, weeks on what could be a simple fix and a small project-based work from our professional services team, who were by far the experts in the organization at making these customizations work. And so collectively, the business
everybody was suboptimized.
Right. The business leaders came together and they said, well, okay, how are we going to solve this problem? And their solution was, we're going to sell these blocks of hours, either when you buy the initial monthly blocks of hours, either when you buy your initial product, or we can bolt it on to new clients. It was to existing, much easier to sell it only to new clients.
Yeah, because we haven't ruined the way they buy.
But they had to go about that whole process, and they ended up moving into this model. But their big challenge in that whole process was the support, the customer success team. They didn't know how and when to escalate. They had clients buying them, and they weren't even using the PS hours, or in some cases they were over leveraging the PS. There was the rules of engagement. They found very quickly were not tightly enough constructed. Right? It was. So they were pulled into that market because their organization was sub-optimizing a result of that. They were worried their clients weren't going to be receptive of it, and contrarily, the clients were very happy to pay for this because they found out that they could get things solved faster and more effectively, but it was still the internal barriers that prevented them from being successful.
And I find that a lot of our tech firms have a very difficult time migrating their businesses, right? that just the way they've been envisioned and the leadership that, for a time leadership was really where do we fit in the market,
right.
and then aggressive selling. But when it came to business model and stuff, it's a little more difficult for them.
Yeah.
And if you're the PS lead, that's you're living with one, I don't really understand what you do, and I might not really care because you're not my sales exec selling product, and we're a product company. So, and then this transition, I think there's just a lot of pieces. And I think 2 years from now, we're going to find out a lot of people went back.
Yeah. Couldn't
cross the chasm.
Yeah.
And I think that's an example of somebody who did go back, right?
They did revert back. They're still dabbling in it. I'll put it that way. Yeah, they haven't quite committed one way or the other to it. But it was interesting in both that example and another one that was very different that I'll touch on really briefly. The biggest concern they had internally was whether or not the customers and the market would accept them behaving in this way. And so they wanted to spend a lot of time on how to position it, where to get started, how to price it effectively, how to do all those things. In both cases, the market accepted it, and the market was willing to work with them in that way because the value prop is there, but you have to execute on that value prop. And in both of these cases, the organization failed to deliver on that because they assumed it was a packaging and pricing problem, not a business model change that took place.
Well, they're good at packaging and pricing.
Yeah.
And, PS is a messy, difficult business. Selling software has those great margins, even though we get the margins over time and it's clean and we can do a demo and then you get over to the real world of making things work and not every head of a tech firm cares.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So a couple of just kind of out.
But you made a point earlier. I just want to give credit to the second example. When they went to a long term, it really helped them because every one of their clients needed to go through it differently.
Correct. Yeah, different sequence.
It really helped them be able to, when done best by them, right? I'm not talking about that, but when done best, it really helped them cobble and move and push and drive success in a relatively complex transformation.
Yeah.
And I would say in that argument, and we've all seen these, right? This is a product that in itself does not solve the problem, although the buyer thinks it will.
Correct.
Right? This is a transformation of a complex business and coming up with things that go literally across multiple locations and multiple businesses within different locations that use similar resources, right? Very complex. And I think if they can get over there from all the other pieces, that for them is a winner.
Yeah. That one is, in particular, that one, I'm glad you brought it back up. The value proposition to the clients, although not positioned quite in this way, was they used to sell, call it 7 projects embedded in a transformation journey. And those projects could take various different sequences depending on the needs of the client. And the sub-optimization of that for the client was that I'm working on this project right now, but in order to make this one most effective and get you the most ROI on this project at this point in time, I also need to do a bit of project 2, and I've got to fix a little bit of things that are going to be project 6, but you haven't paid for project 6 yet. And so there was always this push and pull.
I need more executive time in the but also they had to resell all those projects
every single time, and it was always a delay. And
I don't think in this case
momentum.
They weren't gifted at doing that.
No, they were not.
Yeah. So this solved. So sometimes our point is it can be a really good model for you, right? So I think this gets one of the questions that you asked really well earlier, which is when the topic comes up, what are you supposed to say as the PS leader to the executive committee?
Yeah.
It's not just yes, ma'am. Right? I think there's an opportunity to say, let's look at everything. Right? Let's demap this and figure out what it's really going to take.
Yeah, I think yes. I think that is the key point here, which is that too often we see that it is viewed as this is a pricing strategy. This is an offer delivery construct strategy. This is how do we sell this thing so that it aligns with our software sales strategy.
Right.
But it touches so many different aspects of it that it is truly a business model change in the same way that shifting from a perpetual software to a subscription-based version of that same software is a totally different business model for you to be in. And so it should be explored. Your market is probably very receptive to it.
It's not a sales problem. It is a business model. And does the PS person, are they equipped because of whatever training they've received in life to communicate? Well, hey, this is a big topic.
Yes.
And
more questions than answers.
Yeah, we'll probably revisit this. But I hope you guys have gotten a little taste of maybe some things you haven't seen in your own firm that we think is coming and is more complex than, as you said, pricing, because the clients will accept it.